It was Christmas Eve, a time when families gathered, laughter filled the air, and warmth enveloped homes. In a modest house decorated with twinkling lights and a beautifully adorned tree, the Johnson family was preparing for their Christmas dinner. The smell of roasted turkey and freshly baked pies wafted through the air, promising a festive feast. However, beneath the surface of holiday cheer, tension simmered within the Johnson household. David, the youngest son, had been excited all day. He loved Christmas and looked forward to spending time with his family. He had baked cookies earlier, hoping to surprise everyone with his effort. David was a kind-hearted boy who always tried to help those around him. Unfortunately, his father, Mr. Johnson, was having a difficult time. He had been stressed at work and felt overwhelmed by the pressures of life. The weight of his expectations bore down heavily on him as the family gathered around the table. The atmosphere felt strained. David, eager to contribute, offered to help set the table and serve the food. His mother smiled at him, appreciating his enthusiasm, but Mr. Johnson was not in the mood for cheer. As David clumsily knocked over a glass while trying to pour the drinks, his father's frustration boiled over. "Can't you do anything right?" Mr. Johnson shouted, his voice echoing through the dining room. The room fell silent, and the joy of Christmas seemed to vanish in an instant. David's heart sank. He had only wanted to help, but his father's words felt like a crushing blow. "Dad, I'm sorry," David exclaimed, his voice trembling. "I was just trying to help." But Mr. Johnson was not in a forgiving mood. "You're nothing but a burden? I can't handle this right now," he spat, his words sharp and hurtful. David stood frozen, his eyes wide with shock. The weight of his father's accusation hung heavy in the air, feeling humiliated and rejected. David turned to leave the table. "I'm sorry," he whispered, tears welling up in his eyes. He grabbed his coat and headed for the door, each step feeling heavier than the last. His mother, watching helplessly, wanted to intervene but felt powerless against her husband's anger. As David stepped outside into the cold night, the chill in the air matched the icy feeling in his heart. The world felt dark and lonely. It walked down the street, tears streaming down his face. The festive lights that adorned the houses seemed to mock him, reminding him of the joy he no longer felt. David wandered aimlessly, unsure of where to go. He had always been close to his family, but this moment had shattered that bond. He found himself at the local park, a place he had often visited as a child. Sitting on a bench, he felt utterly alone. The laughter of families celebrating Christmas echoed in the distance, but it felt like a world away. As the night grew darker, David realized he had nowhere to go. The warmth of home was replaced by a deep sense of abandonment. He felt as if his father's words had carved a chasm between them that could never be crossed. In that moment, he made a silent promise to himself. He would prove that he was not a burden. He would find a way to rise above the pain and make something of himself, no matter how difficult the journey would be. With determination in his heart, David wiped his tears and stood up. He knew he had to find a way to turn his life around, even if it meant doing it all alone. After leaving his home that cold Christmas Eve, David felt lost and alone. The world around him seemed big and frightening. With nowhere to go, he wandered the streets, the bright lights of the holiday season now feeling like distant stars. He was determined not to let his father's harsh words define him, but uncertainty loomed over him like a dark cloud. As the night wore on, David stumbled upon a community center that was still open. The bright lights inside beckoned him, and he hesitated for a moment before stepping through the door. Inside, the atmosphere was warm and inviting, filled with laughter and chatter. People of all ages were gathered, sharing stories and enjoying each other's company. It was a stark contrast to the coldness he had just left behind. A kind woman at the front desk noticed his weary expression. "Are you okay, young man?" she asked gently. David hesitated, but something about her caring tone made him feel safe. He explained his situation, and she listened attentively. "You can stay here for the night if you need to," she offered. "We have a safe space for anyone who needs help." Grateful yet apprehensive, David accepted her offer. That night, he found comfort in the community center, surrounded by others who had faced their own struggles. He listened to their stories, realizing he was not alone in his pain. The warmth of their shared experiences began to lift the heavy weight in his heart. The next morning, David awoke with a new sense of purpose. He knew he couldn't stay at the community center forever, so he began searching for a job. He visited local shops and restaurants, asking if they needed help. After several rejections, he finally found a small cafe that was willing to hire him as a dishwasher. Although it was a tough job, David felt a surge of pride as he put on his apron for the first time. Over the next few months, David worked hard at the cafe. He arrived early, ready to scrub dishes and clean tables. The owner, a friendly man named Mr. Thompson, recognized David's dedication and began giving him more responsibilities. David learned how to serve customers and even help in the kitchen. With each task he completed, his confidence grew. Despite his long hours, David continued his education through online classes at the community center. He knew that education was important for his future, and he was determined to succeed. He spent his evenings studying and working on assignments. His hard work did not go unnoticed. His teachers praised his efforts and encouraged him to apply for scholarships. As the months turned into a year, David's life began to change. He saved enough money to rent a small room in a shared house. It wasn't much, but it was his own space, a place where he could study and dream of a better future. He also became close friends with his roommates, who had their own stories of struggle. Together they formed a supportive family, sharing meals and encouraging each other through tough times. David's determination deepened as he began to see the fruits of his labor. He excelled in his studies and received a scholarship to a local community college. The news filled him with joy and hope. He remembered the hurtful words of his father, but realized they had fueled his desire to prove himself. He was no longer the boy who felt like a burden. He was becoming a young man with dreams and goals. As he stood on the brink of this new chapter, David felt a sense of pride wash over him. He had transformed his pain into strength, and he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Journey was far from over, but he was no longer afraid. He had learned to believe in himself, and that was the greatest gift of all. With the scholarship in hand, David stepped into the bright hallways of the local community college. Excitement coursed through his veins as he walked past students chatting and laughing. It felt like a dream, a stark contrast to the lonely nights he had spent after leaving home. This was a new beginning, and David was determined to make the most of it. On his first day, he attended an orientation session where he met other students from diverse backgrounds. Some had come straight from high school, while others were returning to education after years of working. David felt a sense of belonging as they shared their stories and aspirations. He realized that everyone had faced challenges and many had overcome their own struggles just like him. As classes began, David found himself immersed in his studies. He chose to major in business, inspired by his dreams of one day owning his own cafe. He was passionate about food and wanted to create a space where people could gather and feel at home, just like he had at the community center. His professors recognized his dedication and encouraged him to pursue internships that could give him real-world experience. One day, David caught the attention of a professor named Dr. Miller. She was impressed with his enthusiasm and work ethic, and invited him to assist her with a project about local businesses. David eagerly accepted the offer, seeing it as a chance to learn more about the industry he wanted to enter. Working alongside Dr. Miller, he gained valuable insights about marketing, finance, and customer service knowledge that would be essential for his future. As the semester progressed, David's confidence grew. He participated in class discussions and formed study groups with his classmates. They met regularly to review materials and support each other through assignments. David found joy in learning and discovered that he had a talent for helping others understand complex topics. His classmates often turned to him for guidance, and he felt a sense of pride in being able to assist them. However, not everything was easy. David faced moments of self-doubt, especially when he thought about his past and the hurtful words that still echoed in his mind. He often wondered if his father regretted kicking him out and if he would ever reach out to apologize. Despite those thoughts, David focused on his goals and the life he was building for himself. As winter approached, community college organized a holiday event to celebrate the season. Students were encouraged to bring a dish to share, and David decided to prepare his famous cookies. He spent hours perfecting the recipe, remembering the joy he felt baking with his mother before everything changed. On the day of the event, he arrived with a tray of cookies, feeling both nervous and excited. When David entered the room, he was met with smiles and laughter. He set up his cookies on a table, and soon they became a hit among his classmates. People complimented him on their taste, and he felt a sense of accomplishment. It was a reminder that he could still create joy, even from a distance. During the event, David noticed a group of students gathering around him, sharing stories and laughter. He felt accepted and valued for the first time in a long while. As he shared his journey, others opened up about their struggles and connections formed. In that moment, David realized he had found a new family, a group of friends who understood and supported him. Looking around at the smiling faces, David felt a warmth in his heart. He knew he was on the right path. He was not just surviving, he was thriving. Each step he took brought him closer to his dreams, and he was excited to see what the future held. This was his new beginning, and he was ready to embrace it fully. While David was busy building a new life for himself, his father, Mr. Johnson, found himself trapped in a different reality. The weight of regret pressed heavily on his shoulders, making each day feel like an uphill battle. After kicking David out that Christmas Eve, he had hoped that his anger would fade and that life would return to normal. But instead, he felt a deep void in his heart, a constant reminder of the son he had pushed away. In the months that followed, Mr. Johnson's life began to unravel. He struggled at work, unable to concentrate on tasks that once seemed easy. Colleagues noticed his distraction and often asked if he was okay, but he brushed off their concerns with vague answers. The truth was that he felt lost and alone. The pride he once had in his family was replaced by shame at home. The atmosphere was just as bleak. Mrs. Johnson tried to keep the holiday spirit alive, decorating the house and preparing festive meals, but Mr. Johnson's anger cast a shadow over everything. He would often snap at her for no reason, and she felt helpless to reach him. The happy family dinners they used to enjoy became silent affairs, filled with tension and unspoken words. As the seasons changed, Mr. Johnson found himself reminiscing about the moments he had shared with David. He remembered his son's laughter, the way he would run around the house during the holidays, and the joy he brought into their lives. Those memories haunted him, and each time he thought about what he had said, a wave of guilt washed over him. He often replayed the scene in his mind, wishing he could take back the words that had hurt his son so deeply. Despite his regret, Mr. Johnson struggled to find a way to reach out to David. Pride held him back. He feared rejection and the possibility that his son might not want to hear from him. He imagined David living a happy life without him, and the thought crushed him. Every Christmas that passed felt emptier than the last, a constant reminder of his son's absence. One evening, while sitting alone in the living room, Mr. Johnson picked up an old photo album. As he flipped through the pages, tears began to stream down his face. He saw pictures of David as a child, full of joy and innocence. There were pictures of birthdays, family vacations, and holiday celebrations. Each photo tugged at his heartstrings, and he longed to turn back time as he looked. At the photos, Mr. Johnson felt a sense of urgency. He realized that he needed to try to make amends. He couldn't let pride keep him from reaching out to his son. But how could he do it? What could he say after everything that had happened? He knew he had to be honest and vulnerable, but the fear of David's response held him back. Days turned into weeks, and still, he couldn't bring himself to reach out. His mind raced with thoughts of what he would say. "I'm sorry" felt too simple, yet it was all he could muster. The longer he waited, the more anxious he became. He began to question whether it was too late for forgiveness. Finally, as Christmas approached once more, Mr. Johnson felt a flicker of hope. He decided to write a letter to David, pouring out his heart and expressing all the feelings he had kept bottled up for so long. It was a step, albeit a small one, toward healing the rift between them. He hoped that somehow this letter would reach his son and that David would find it in his heart to forgive him. With trembling hands, he began to write, knowing that this might be his last chance to reconnect with the boy he had once called a burden. As Christmas approached, David was filled with excitement. He had worked hard all year, and now it was time to celebrate with his friends at the community college. They planned a holiday party, and David was eager to showcase his baking skills. Once again, he decided to make his famous cookies, the ones that had brought so much joy to him and his friends before. On the day of the party, David arrived at the community center early to set up. The decorations sparkled with lights, and the air was filled with laughter and cheerful music. His friends greeted him warmly as he placed his cookies on the table. The atmosphere was vibrant, and David felt a sense of belonging that he had longed for as the party began. David mingled with his friends, sharing stories and enjoying the festivities. He felt grateful for the support and love he had found him, this new family. However, deep down, he still carried the scars of his past, especially the painful memory of being called a burden by his father. While he tried to push those thoughts aside, they lingered in the back of his mind. Meanwhile, Mr. Johnson was at home, nervously pacing the floor. He had finally written the letter to David, pouring out his heart and expressing his deep regret. He had sealed it in an envelope, but now he didn't know what to do with it. Should he mail it? Should he try to deliver it in person? The fear of David's reaction gnawed at him. What if his son rejected him? After much deliberation, Mr. Johnson made a decision. He would go to the community center where David spent so much time. Maybe, just maybe, he could find a way to give the letter to him in person. As he drove through the familiar streets, memories of happier times flooded back. He remembered taking David to the park, watching him play, and feeling proud of the young boy he was becoming. When Mr. Johnson arrived at the community center, he felt his heart race. He took a deep breath and walked inside. The lively atmosphere was a stark contrast to the heaviness he felt. He scanned the room, searching for David among the crowd. Finally, he spotted him across the room, surrounded by friends and laughter. David looked happy, his eyes sparkling with joy. In that moment, Mr. Johnson felt a mixture of pride and regret. He wanted to approach his son, but fear held him back. He stood by the entrance, watching from a distance, feeling like an outsider in his own son's life. Just as he was about to turn away, David glanced in his direction. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. David's expression changed from joy to surprise as he recognized his father. He felt a rush of emotions, a mixture of confusion, anger, and curiosity. Mr. Johnson took a step forward, his heart pounding. "David!" he called out softly, his voice barely above a whisper. David hesitated, then slowly walked toward his father. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone guarded. "I came to see you," Mr. Johnson said, his voice trembling. "I want to talk." The room began to fade away as they stood face to face, the noise of the party becoming distant. David felt a whirlwind of emotions. He didn't know what to say. Mr. Johnson reached into his pocket and pulled out the letter. "I wrote this for you. It's important," he said, holding it out. Taking a deep breath, David accepted the letter, his hands shaking. In that moment, they both knew that this was a chance for healing, an opportunity to mend what had been broken. As David glanced at the envelope, he felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this Christmas would not be filled with hurt. After all, it could be the beginning of something new. David stood there, the letter trembling in his hands. He looked at his father, Mr. Johnson, who wore an expression of both hope and fear. The noise of the party faded into the background as a heavy silence settled between them. David felt a mix of emotions, anger, confusion, and a flicker of hope. "What do you want to talk about?" David asked, his voice steady but guarded. He wanted to know why his father had come after all this time. Mr. Johnson took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "I came to apologize," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "I know I hurt you, and I regret it every day. I called you a burden when I was overwhelmed, and I was wrong. I should have never said those words." David's heart raced as he listened. He had waited so long to hear his father say this. However, part of him still felt hesitant. "You kicked me out, Dad. You made me feel like I was nothing," he replied. His voice filled with emotion. "I was angry and scared," Mr. Johnson admitted, his eyes filled with regret. I let my feelings get the best of me. I didn't know how to handle my stress, and I took it out on you. I've thought about you every day since. I miss you, David. David looked down at the letter in his hands, feeling the weight of his father's words. You don't know what it was like for me, he said quietly. I had to figure everything out on my own. I felt lost and alone. I know, Mr. Johnson replied earnestly. I'm so sorry for that. I wish I could take back what I said and how I acted. I've been trying to change. I've been going to counseling to understand my anger and how to be a better person. I know it's not enough, but I want to try to make things right between us. David took a moment to process his father's words. He had spent years feeling abandoned, yet here was his father, standing in front of him, fully vulnerable. It was hard to reconcile the man he had once looked up to with the one who had hurt him so deeply. Why now? David asked, searching his father's eyes for answers. Why did you decide to come back? Because I realized that life is too short to hold on to pride, Mr. Johnson replied, his voice filled with sincerity. I want to be a part of your life again. I want to support you and see you succeed. I don't want my mistakes to define our relationship. David felt a wave of emotions wash over him. He had dreamed of this moment, yet it was still difficult to fully trust his father. I don't know if I can forgive you right away, David admitted. It's going to take time. I understand, Mr. Johnson said, nodding. Not asking for forgiveness right now. I just want you to know how much I regret my actions and how much I care about you. I want to be here for you no matter what. Taking a deep breath, David looked at the letter again. This was the moment he had both anticipated and feared. He knew that it would take time to heal, but perhaps this was the first step. I'll read your letter, David said softly, his heart beginning to open. And maybe we can start over. Mr. Johnson's eyes filled with tears of relief. Thank you, David. That means more to me than you know. As they stood together, a new understanding began to form between them. It was the beginning of a long journey toward healing, a chance to rebuild their relationship, brick by brick. David felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Perhaps Christmas this year could truly be a time of renewal, a time to forge a new bond between father and son. The atmosphere at the community center was warm and welcoming, filled with laughter and the sweet scent of holiday treats. David and Mr. Johnson stood together, a bridge slowly forming between them after years of hurt and silence. As David opened the letter, he felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. He knew this letter contained his father's thoughts, feelings, and perhaps a path toward healing. As David read the letter, his heart began to soften. Mr. Johnson had written about his regrets, his struggles, and the deep love he still held for his son. He expressed his desire to reconnect and be there for David as he pursued his dreams. The words flowed with sincerity. Noetta could feel the weight of his father's remorse in every line. When David finished reading, he looked up at his father. This means a lot to me, he said quietly. I can see that you really want to change. Mr. Johnson nodded, his eyes glistening with tears of hope. I do, David. I want to be part of your life again. I know I can't change the past, but I want to support you in the future. David took a deep breath. He realized that while he had suffered, he had also grown into a strong and resilient young man. He didn't have to carry the pain of his past alone anymore. I'm willing to try, he said, a smile beginning to form on his face. But it will take time for me to fully trust you again. I understand, Mr. Johnson replied, a sense of relief flooding over him. I'm here for as long as it takes. I'll do whatever I can to earn your trust back. As they stood together in the bustling community center, David felt lighter. The burden he had carried for so long began to lift. It was as if a weight had been taken off his shoulders, and he could finally breathe again. Over the following weeks, David and Mr. Johnson began to rebuild their relationship. They started with small steps, meeting for coffee, sharing stories, and slowly getting to know each other again. David introduced his father to his friends, and they all welcomed Mr. Johnson with open arms. Understanding the importance of family. During one of their meetings, David shared his plans for the future. He talked about his dreams of opening his own cafe, inspired by the memories of baking with his mother when he was a child. Mr. Johnson listened intently, feeling proud of the young man his son had become. "I'd love to help you with that," Mr. Johnson offered. "I know a few things about running a business, and I can help you with the planning." David smiled, appreciating the gesture. "That would be great, Dad. I'd like your advice." As Christmas approached once again, David decided to invite Mr. Johnson to join him and his friends for the holiday celebration at the community center. It was a big step for both of them. David wanted to show his father that he was ready to embrace this new chapter, while Mr. Johnson was eager to be part of his son's life again. On the day of the celebration, the community center was filled with decorations, laughter, and the sound of holiday music. David felt a sense of joy that had been missing for so long. He introduced Mr. Johnson to his friends, who welcomed him warmly. It felt like a fresh start, a new beginning for both father and son. As they shared cookies and stories, David looked around at the smiles on everyone's faces. He realized that family could be built in many ways, and he was grateful for the chance to reconnect with his father. The past could not be changed, but they had the power to shape their future together. This Christmas was not just a celebration of the holiday. It marked a new chapter in their lives. David felt hope and love fill the space around them. He knew that while the journey ahead would have its challenges, they could face them together. In that moment, surrounded by laughter and warmth, David understood that forgiveness and healing were powerful gifts that could bring families back together.